Well, good morning again. Daniel Valdez again. It's good to talk to you after, 9 or 10 days or whatever. Wherever you're getting the podcast, YouTube, the Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, wherever you're getting it, thank you so much for listening today. Lots of stuff to cover. A lot of stuff has happened. And, of course, as always, I post something and then literally 3 or 4 hours later, something major drops. So we'll go ahead and talk about all that stuff. We're in July. This is the first one of July, and July feels like the 11th hour for the marching arts. It really feels like that. A lot of questions that we've all been asking. It looks like they're going to be answered this month. Probably later in the month, but we'll see. A lot of districts are going to be announcing their plans, whether they're going to, keep full contest shows and plow forward, or whether they're going to be all in a handshake agreement or elbow bump agreement or whatever to say, hey, maybe we need to shelve those plans. Whether programs are going to be traveling to contest, whether they're going to be able to be allowed to travel to contest, which is a completely different story that nobody's talking about. I think all that stuff's going to be answered this month. Remember, we're a month away. We're less than a month away from August 1st. A lot of dates in this. A lot of dates here. A lot of numbers here. So, August 1st, UIL, you can start learning your contest show starting August 1st. The big question is there going to be any contest to learn the show for? So we're going to find out. This feels really... This feels very 11th hour-ish. And I understand it. I understand from an organizational standpoint, from a business standpoint, waiting and seeing what can be done, if anything can be done to salvage or go forward with a fall 2020 season. So, a lot of plans are going to be announced. Some plans we may like, some plans we may not like, depending on how you're involved in the activity. So, let's just prepare. Let's try to stay positive as best as we can, and we'll see how things go. With that being said, let's go over what happened. So I posted last week on June 25th, and I think literally 3 hours after that, the Midwest Clinic put up news saying that their in-person convention was canceled. The Midwest Clinic and the TMEA Clinic are like the two biggest music education conventions, not just in the United States, but like the world. These things are huge. Everybody that I've talked to who's ever been to Midwest Clinic, I've never been. It's in Chicago, and it's in December. Everyone that I've talked to who's been to Midwest has always said two things about it. Number one, it's an incredible experience that they'll never forget. And number two, the hallways in the convention hall are very, very narrow. So I imagine that had something to do with canceling the event. I'm sure travel had a lot to do with it, with districts maybe not letting their students travel out of state. There's issues with airlines. There's issues with hotels. There's all sorts of stuff that contributes to these cancellations. So Midwest Clinic has been officially, the in-person deal has been canceled. They're looking at virtual options. I know this is very disappointing, especially for those ensembles. A lot of A-list, A+, 5-star, MVP Texas ensembles were headed up there to go do their thing at the Midwest Clinic. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like that's going to happen this year, but maybe we can work out something virtually, maybe a virtual conference or a clinic or a performance, maybe live streamed or something, I don't know. Further details are going to be discussed, but Midwest Clinic in person has been officially canceled. And then after that, PASIC, Percussive Arts Society International Convention, a massive convention that's held in Indianapolis. That is being moved over to a virtual event only. So even percussionists are getting told what to do here. The PASIC convention is obviously a very, very popular convention that a lot of percussion artists like to attend. Wonderful clinics and performances all over the place there. The reason this is such a huge deal, if you're not a percussionist and you're just a regular marching member or you're just a, band parent or whatever, PASIC convention goes on in Indianapolis at the exact same time as Grand Nationals. So think about that. You have these two events, these two massive events running concurrently in the same city. And one of them is canceled. PASIC convention, in person, not happening. Again, virtual options are being discussed. So hopefully that gets to, any invited ensembles will probably, live stream it or something. Same thing with the Midwest Clinic. They cancel it, and then, hey, we're still working on plans. We'll get back to you. This one is especially difficult to swallow because of the proximity to Grand Nationals, not only in place but time. So I don't know if that's a sign of things to come, but that's as far as the fall 2020 season, that's not a good sign. Then after that, a lot of news. Damn. TMEA announced that Allstate auditions, at least up until I think the middle of January of next year, Allstate auditions are going to be conducted through video recordings online. Again, no details beyond that, just video recordings online, and we'll get back to you with details. When that news came down, I had a lot of marching members, not marching members, but a lot of music students reach out to me. I talked to a few Allstate students over the past couple of days about how they felt about this. To say that there is concern over how this is going to affect results is an understatement. I would have hoped that there would have been some more guidelines to how TMEA is going to handle video recordings, because obviously there's a big integrity thing of how to tape it properly and, make sure that the audition process remains as anonymous as it would be if you were in the audition room like you normally are. Obviously, this decision was made for the health and safety of the students across the state. So TMEA is all the auditions are basically done through video recordings. I have no idea how that's going to work. There could be different options. It just kind of depends on how you want to handle all that stuff. Could it be one thing where it's like, okay, you're only going to perform this thing one time, straight through, and then we just basically use that all the way through Allstate auditions? I don't know how that's going to work. TMEA has, I assume that TMEA is going to run this, like the whole Allstate audition thing, kind of like how they do TMEA honor band recordings. There's all sorts of requirements of when to tape, how to tape it, what size file, not necessarily file, but what frequency to record in, and all that stuff. There's all sorts of rules for that, so I imagine something similar will be drafted up to accommodate it to an individual level. Obviously, many concerns there of, there's just a lot of concerns, obviously. But TMEA made the call early on, and the reason they had to make that call is because the audition materials come out later this month. I think they come out like the third week of July, and then tapes are released to students of like, okay, here's exactly how to play the instrument. And of course, you got some professor who's been playing the instrument for 25 years showing you how to do it, and you're like, oh, okay, no problem. So that's what TMEA is doing. I'm sure more details are to come. Stay tuned for that. Hopefully that whole thing goes down with minimal disruption and minimal worry to the students. But I know the students are concerned right now, which is understandable. As far as the other states that have either modified or canceled events for their state contests, we've got so far it's Virginia, Louisiana, Illinois, and Mississippi. In some way, they've either altered how they do their state championships or they cancel them altogether. So those are the 4 states right now. I'm sure that more will pop up. And I think you're going to hear more about that later this month. And here is the reason why. We should all probably remember this date. Later this week, which is this Friday, July 10th, that could be a day that could make or break the fall 2020 season. And the reason why is because right now there is a massive, unprecedented study going on at the University of Colorado. It's an aerosol study specifically designed or specifically focused on the marching arts. Lots of backers for this. Lots of financial support. A lot of data being shared from all sorts of organizations. The organizations you've come to love, like, DCI and WGI and Music for All and UIL, believe is involved in this somehow. I think they are. A lot of state school organizations have their chips on the table for this study that's being done at the University of Colorado. Basically, you're studying aerosols. Can COVID-19 be transmitted through aerosols, little water droplets, from person to person? If so, how much, what's the risk? Is it 2 times risky, 3 times, whatever the risk is? Especially for those people that are asymptomatic. Remember, asymptomatic, you're not showing any symptoms. You don't have a fever. You don't have shortness of breath or anything like that. Therefore, you probably haven't been tested for it and you don't know you have it. So what are the risks of playing a woodwind and brass instrument as an asymptomatic person? What is the chance that you're going to end up infecting somebody while playing your instrument? July 10th is when the preliminary results come down for woodwind and brass players, or their results. The guidelines will follow shortly after that. Like I said, a lot of organizations, a lot of performing arts organizations, a lot of state school organizations have their chips on the table for this. So they're looking out for this. They're looking for guidelines. This is, if I had to wager, this is probably the most... It's the biggest reason why some states and some organizations really haven't said anything yet. Because they're waiting for this. It's like, okay, here's your science. This is your science. It's a big packet of science. It's a big bag of science. Here you go. And they're going to give guidelines or recommendations. So this is it. This is the thing that could make or break the season. If it turns out, hey, you're no more likely to pass this on while playing instruments around each other than, sharing a cup of coffee with somebody, then that may be a good sign. That may be something like, okay, now we can kind of game plan towards that. If it comes out to where, like, hey, if you're playing your saxophone, sorry, saxophone people, and you have COVID, and you're playing it around somebody that doesn't have COVID, they're 10 times more likely to contract it, then we've got issues. Now we've got a published paper. Now we've got scientific data that says, hey, you're going to get somebody sick if you have it and somebody else doesn't have it. And it's going to be very difficult to fight against that or argue against that, because this is what we're all waiting for. So it's a big study. It's, like I said, unprecedented as far as the amount of organizations, amount of performing arts organizations that are contributing to this, whether it's data or financially. It's a massive deal. And, obviously we hope that there's some good news out of this somehow, because Lord knows the world could use a little good news, especially in the marching arts activity. But we're just going to have to wait and see, unfortunately. Like I said, July 11th hour, it feels like all your major decisions, it feels like the organizations really want to get everything done before August 1st. That way, okay, these are the outlines, these are the guidelines, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go forward with events, or we're going to cancel events, or whatever. We're going to modify, do whatever we need to. That way we can just try it. We have something to game plan for. Directors and teachers, music teachers, have something to game plan for, instead of just, well, I'm going to try to game plan for every possible situation, which is impossible. And then once those guidelines are down, we move forward with the season. And then, of course, if something happens and things get worse, and, don't say it can't happen again, because it did happen here, unfortunately. Then we adjust and we make, we call audibles and see what we need to do. So get ready. July is going to be a very interesting time. It's going to be one of those times in the marching arts history when you go through the book and you read the entire story of the marching arts. July 2020, I feel like, is going to be the one thing we're all going to look at and go, wow, what a month. So with that being said, if you're a marching member, if you're a student, keep practicing. And that's exactly what I told students that were reaching out about the TMEA process changing. I said, hey, no matter what goes on, you got to put in the work. You've got to put in the work. That is your duty as a member of the fine arts community. It is your duty as a musician. It is your duty as an artist. You play an instrument, you're an artist, whether you like it or not. And your duty is to put on the best performance possible, no matter what. So let's get after it. Big month ahead. I'm going to be with you every step of the way. I'm done here. Thank you so much for joining me today. Really appreciate the messages and emails and all that stuff. I really appreciate it, especially those who are really supportive when I'm at work and stuff like that. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I will talk to you the second something else breaks. Until then, I'm done here. Thank you so much for listening, and enjoy the rest of your week. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Adios. Bye-bye.